Very excited talking here with Sadé, my friend and someone I admire greatly, Sadé Muhammad, who is the Chief Marketing and Impact Officer at Time, a person with a remarkable reputation and is doing great work at an iconic brand. Couldn't be more excited. And we are going to be talking today about the state of B2B marketing right now. And Sadé, hi.
Hi, so good to talk with you always. And thank you for continuing to lead in this space and help make sense of all of it.
I know it, it's chaos. So I think I'd love to start as we're really, I think, going to focus on creativity in the B2B marketing space, which is a place that I would say a place people talk a lot about, and sometimes we see some really exciting activity in, but I think it's an area, I'd say it's an area of the B2B marketing ecosystem in flux, and there's all kinds of things going on. I know you have done a lot of work in the community development and in kind of activating community. I wonder if maybe a good starting point, as you're looking at the challenges that you're dealing with today, why don't you give a little, articulate some of the work that you're doing and how you're using creativity in service of time and the job that needs to be done, by that practice?
Yeah, great question. So I started at Time almost 2 years ago. And as we all know, Time is an incredible brand. And when I first started sort of doing some market research and just talking to folks about why they had advertised with Time or decided not to, a lot of the feedback was, we love Time, it's a great brand, but anybody, we can talk with Time about anything. We don't know sort of what to go to Time specifically for. Right. And so that was kind of, I thought, my sort of marching orders to figure out how do we make this sort of segment the brand in a way that would appeal more to marketers, because ultimately, my customer is another marketer.
Right. It's like, what is Time in this moment in time?
Exactly. And so we had to think about that, and where we landed was that it's community. If you come to our events or experience the brand digitally or socially, wherever, there's a sense of aspiration, of inspiration, but also feeling like to be among these other folks means something and means that I've made it or in some way. And so we wanted to tap into that essence of community and then look at what are the communities where we're not serving. So that's something that I personally love to do. And so that's sort of how we wanted to approach.
So that's very interesting. It sounds to me like one of the things you had to really codify and bring to life was your customer promise. And how did you, I would be very interested to hear, again, we only see it what comes to life, right? The world, but for your CMO colleagues, the work is done behind closed doors, the work is done. How did you bring that customer? What was your journey in identifying the customer promise, and then how did you bring it to life?
Yeah.
However that journey took place.
Yeah, I mean, so it was, obviously we have at a media company and magazine, there are stakeholders on the business side, and editorial obviously is the main stakeholder, right? So everything has to go through them and has to be validated by them, and they have to feel truly bought into whatever promise that is. And so the editorial team, are great partners for marketing in terms of, we've got to, trust is obviously a core tenet. We've got to tell the truth. We've got to still hold folks' feet to the fire as journalists. And so that can't, impact how we're showing up in market. And so those are some of the things that we've had to grapple with internally. But I think where we landed was figuring out, okay, who do we most want to serve, that we're not serving? Younger folks, folks of color, sort of identifying what those communities could be. And then what's the editorial vision that feels super Time. And then how do we activate and bring that to community to life in a way that could feel maybe new? So my the biggest thing that I wanted the takeaway to be is, and what I've heard is, oh, I love time, or time is great, but I never saw myself in time, right? So changing that perspective where folks feel like they can actually be a part of the brand as opposed to something that's, just on a newsstand or a cover on the wall, has been like the journey of making sure that we uphold the legacy, but like maybe there's a new way that we could approach this.
And how did you get to understand the customer? Were you surveying them? Were there any tactically, how did you bring that to life?
Tactically, it was a lot of, just because we don't have, it's not like we have a huge budget to do any of those things.
All right.
Transparently.
You and every B2B marketer in the universe.
So no, as much as I wanted to do that, no, it was not. It was literally a ton of customer meetings. That was my survey.
This is the best. By the way, that's the best. That's the best kind of stuff.
Perfect. And so lucky me, people want to talk to us because they hear the brand time, right? And also me being super inquisitive kind of fits into the whole media thing as well. So I would use the customer meetings to not just, tactically talk about what you're looking for, but why. And so that's how I learned. One, you're not going to come to time because you're just looking to do sort of a super media focused plan. You can, but really you're coming to us because you want to be associated with the things that we're talking about. You feel like you're owning your space, but there's a gap and that people won't believe that you care about the things that you're espousing without someone like time. So I found out that we could really fill that gap and be sort of, the validation and the thought leader.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so how would you bring that to life with your partners, with your brand partners?
Yeah, so tons of examples. But one that sticks out is we launched something on Martha's Vineyard called Impact House. Time had never been on Martha's Vineyard. And that was over 3 days.
Record, I just got back from it. I love.
Isn't it the best? So you have to come to Impact House next year. What?
I'm in.
Okay, good. And so it was over 3 days. The focus was, did it with a financial partner, and their biggest KPI was one, how do we talk to this community in a way that resonates with them? Of course, these folks are essentially on vacation, but we know they're some of the most influential, sort of high net worth folks. So we want to talk to them, but how do we do that in a way that feels genuine? And then also, how do we convert business? I mean, literally, that was, not our KPI, but that was their KPI.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out how are we getting the right folks in the room? How are we identifying sort of between who their customers are and the time community? What's the right mix of the programming and the audience and sort of the event, all of those things where that could happen. And so it's not just, they want media, they want digital media. It's no, I want to be able to get new business as a result of the partnership.
Oh, all right. So when we're talking about the friction between generating business and remaining on brand and the application of creativity and customer promise, B2B is a motion in which there's a lot of emphasis on demand generation, both for you, for time, but also for your brand partners. Yeah. Have you found any way when you're in that, how is the application of creativity and commitment to what I would say like a customer promise?
Yeah.
How does that impact the journey of your, of the activation?
Yeah, I think creativity is the centerpiece. I think everyone kind of wants to feel like they're part of something new, right? Just generally. And so our go-to-market was essentially where we created 12 new franchises, essentially, last year. So that was...
Like the Impact House is one example.
Is one. Yep. Time. So we just launched Time AI, the Time 100 AI yesterday, Time 100 Health, Time 100 Climate. So we've launched all these incredible new franchises. And so that was our path to innovation. Literally, We
Wow, that's
can't hire more journalists. But we have to produce we have to be able to say, no, 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 listen to us. We have something new.
yep.
So we couldn't increase our resources, but we could use those resources in a different way. And we figured the
Hmm.
best way to do that to reach a B2B audience was to get specific about different tent poles, climate, health, AI that we knew would resonate, and then to dive into the community strategy, Impact House, the closers, 18 Black leaders closing the racial wealth gap, Latino leaders. So that was our
It's
strategy.
such great work, by the way, Sadé. It's like it is pretty exciting, like the work that you're doing. I mean, you know.
It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's fun. Like I think like if you know, I've been in media and have not had the opportunity to have a big budget. I don't even know what that looks or feels like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's always been about how can we make sure the partner really has to be on our team. Like I feel like
Yeah.
every partner is like my team member, and I have to convince the rest of the organization that that's the case because they're funding what we want to bring to life, what we can't work on unless, you know, from a journalist can't write about unless we have the support.
So this
Um,
is a great. This is a great. It's funny you just segued so immediately into my next question, which is how much change management, how much dialogue for this? How do you frame for the CFO? Right, there's a lot,
yeah,
and that is
yeah,
something that it's applicable to every B2B CMO challenge, but certainly creativity is at the top of the, when you're
yeah.
talking about innovation and the application of these things. How do you frame it, or how have you been so successful in creating so much, innovative experience, content, community development, so that you could get sort of the stakeholders who are outside of your team
Yeah.
engaged, involved, and the work funded,
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the most difficult part.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. But I will say that, you know, I understand my perspective as, you know, loving to be creative and loving content and marketing, but everyone's not like me and they have different goals and
Yep.
responsibilities. And so I think the first part is just recognizing truly that that is the case, that it's not personal. They just have a different set of KPIs. And so for everything
Right.
that I've tried to bring to market, you know, we've had to internally convince the team first, and I've tried to figure out what's the win for
Hmm.
every single stakeholder that has nothing to do with what the win is, you know, from a marketing perspective. So for the head of HR, like, why does this franchise matter? Why is it
Yep.
helpful? Because when our employees saw this content, they were like, whoa, they never asked to come to an event before. Now they're like, can I come to that? You know, so and they felt like, oh, we're doing this sort of content. I feel seen. I feel celebrated. And so that's a retention. That's a, you know, so like really
Hmm.
figuring out for every stakeholder, especially obviously for finance and for them, it's a margins conversation. And so there's a lot of stuff that's, you know, no, but if you can get it to this, if you can figure out how this is the margin, then we can do it. And so a lot of the strategy at that point, past the creativity piece, was okay, we want to do these 20 things. We probably can only do 7 to 10 of them.
But I love that what you're saying is like, no, but you bring the stakeholder along early in the dialogue. I mean, that is itself quite an insight, is that when something you feel could be impactful can't be done,
Yeah.
you get definition from the people creating that friction as to,
Yeah.
what do we need to get this done? And then, not unlike a B2B buying cycle, which can be long, it just takes time perhaps to sort of put the pieces in place to sort of, then they are along for the ride, it sounds like, right?
100%, which is so cool because it goes from like it could start out a bit difficult, and then they are and feel as though they're a part of the team too and the creative team. So that's cool. Like, you know, and that you don't always see at the beginning. You just feel like it's just got to be this constant push and pull, but you know, we have found that it doesn't when you just bring folks along early and say, how is this a win for you? Like
Yeah.
they have to be able to say, these are the everything that I'm bringing you has a particular margin. Okay, that's what you have to say. So now this idea has to somehow, I have to check these boxes with one idea versus three. What do I have to change about how I'm putting this together in order to make that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And when are there things that you've seen in the broader market that you find exciting? Any trends you've seen outside of time that you are like, oh, that work is inspired, or that work is making a marketing impact that I think is cool?
Yeah, from the media perspective, I would say just any content that doesn't feel compromised by a
Mhm.
very difficult environment.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
because I think um, we have seen this year, like there is this contracting, and budgets are not just they're getting pulled.
Yeah.
Um, and so anything where it's long form when it's everything in that space is short form, or there's
Yeah.
something where they're still taking that risk because the consumer is not really as concerned with the market trends in the way we are. And so I think just good work that doesn't feel like it's being compromised is always
Hmm.
exciting to see.
Well, one thing I really think that you've done really brilliantly is, media has become commodified through programmatic marketplace, et cetera, things that we all know in this space. And the work that you've done has allowed people, your clients, your customers, to generate value, which is at a premium from your brand, which is a premium brand, right? So this is always the disaster, is when something that has equity, like a brand like Time, is not able to unlock that value for its customers because of, people are buying it programmatically or whatever, and whereas what you're bringing to them, these sort of exceptional experiences, et cetera, with exceptional brand partners, and it all that credentials those experiences and therefore credentials those partners, is really, really cool. And I know very hard, but also very valuable when it works.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, obviously there's a place for media um, and that sort of buying strategy. But there is quite a difference in the type of conversations we're able to have, just when the value is about more than that. And I
Yeah.
think every single time the clients are just more engaged, um, happier. Just it just works out so much better for marketers when they feel like, yes, I'm going to get the distribution that I need, but there's so much more here that I can tell my teams about why this matters.
So one final kind of little thought, one thing that we've talked about is this idea behind closed doors. Like, I think we're joking, like, when we're not performing, what are we doing, right? And as marketers, and it's always interesting to think, like, we all are very astute at talking about the challenges and articulate at that. But sometimes it's messy, and the things that actually are happening behind closed doors are more tactical, right? When you're with your team, you're not talking about broad trends across an industry. You're like,
Exactly.
holy shit, what are we doing to send emails out today? You know what I mean? Like, what, do we have an email do we have an email system? It's not like, well, the future of marketing automation is da 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 da. It's more like, what do I do to send an email? Like, I mean, so what is, when you're with your team, what would you say are the sort of immediate challenges that you're trying to address?
Yeah. So, I have folks at different points in their journey on my team and in their time journey. So there are some pieces where
Mm.
we've figured it out and we've gone through the change management piece and it's like a well-oiled machine. And then there are other things that we're trying that are newer, that it's like it's 2 years ago. Um, so I think it's interesting for me, like as a leader, to manage both of those, and to figure out where, like, oh, I thought we had figured this out, but maybe we haven't. So there's a lot of that in terms of just internal process, and like how are we really making sure that we're bringing folks along the right way, and also we're setting up the teams to be incentivized to do what we need.
Right, like great work, right? Like
Yeah, and so
aligning.
like and so realizing that that's not maybe the case is tough, and
Yep.
not really knowing exactly how to change it is a
Yep.
bit tougher.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's all part of the work. It's just like our team set up. We're saying we have this really premium brand and we're selling a certain way. Our team's also set up to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. I love it.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, it does. I mean, I think it's about creating a culture of and alignment among your teams. I think that is a challenge that many people have, particularly as we spoke before. As a B2B CMO, a B2B CMO is asked to be so proficient at so many disparate things.
that you're
And
not,
I think,
that
and
I'm
I
not
think it
an
becomes
expert in. Yeah.
right, and it becomes very hard to understand in reality, not in theory, how do you make sure that the job to be done is being done when you yourself are not in fact a magician. You are just, you have your own superpowers and that are winning. How do you make sure that your team is able to complement that and manage to that? So that's a challenge. I think that's will resonate very deeply with a lot of people, myself included.
And it's weird, right? Because you're used to being good at what you're good at, and
Right.
then these other technical areas that you're managing that you understand, obviously, but maybe don't to the level that your team does. And so how are you like establishing that trust and really digging in a way that is valuable on both ends? Yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
Cool.
Sadé, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Scott.
That was fantastic. You're
Helpful.
fantastic.